Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rebecca Aguilar, SPJ's president-elect. Thank you for joining us today on SPJ Truth Day. We're excited to screen the new documentary, Selling Lives, which explores how in 2016, an army of teenagers found a way to get rich by spreading false news articles on Facebook leading up to the presidential election. And we welcome the director behind the film, Academy Award nominated director, Leslie Iwerks. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Rebecca. How are
Good to
you?
see you. I'm great. Leslie, by the way, is a born storyteller. Her films have covered everything from the Guatemalan garbage dumps to the toxic tar sands of Alberta, Canada. She is the CEO and creative director of Iwerks and Company. Leslie, thank you again for joining us today. Before we get to the screening of Selling Lives, um, tell us, what do you hope our viewers and our listeners will take away from your film?
Well, I think, for those who heard about this going on back in 2016 about these Macedonian kids making all this money on Facebook, I think, for me, I really wanted to get to the truth behind the lies. And so I flew there on my own dollar and shot this with my DP. We did it really bare bones with a camera and like one light. And it was really just a journey to discover why and how these people could try to interfere in our election. And we drilled down, we lifted the hood on how they can infiltrate Facebook and where the fissures in Facebook were. And so I think if I were to hope what the takeaway would be is that people get a new insight into really what it takes to create fake news and the motives behind it and the sheer lack of morality around it and what makes these people tick. And it just gives you a new insight into the fake news industry.
One of the things we're going to do after we screen this film, and again, thank you for allowing us to do this, is we are going to have a Q&A with Leslie and find out more. Leslie, before we go to the film, when you look at this film, do you think that what we will see today is possibly something that's going on now?
Of course, it's happening in a much bigger way today than it was in 2016. The actors that are doing this are global. They're states, they're countries, they are bots, they are mechanized, they are very motivated, and it's a very scary time. I think the key thing is for people to really be aware of it, for the general public to be aware of fake news, how to track it, how to find it, how to be aware, how to discern it, how to spot it, and how not to share it. And so we need to be the responsibility folks, the responsible folks who are the ones to say, nope, I'm not sharing that. Nope, I don't believe that. Nope, let me fact check that. Let me check the source. So I'm hoping that this film will just show a little glimpse into that world and provide a bit of a sea change in how people view what they read.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Okay, everybody, stick around after the screening because we will have another conversation with Leslie, Q&A. Also, you're going to find out who inspired her to be the great filmmaker she is today. Okay. Well, very interesting documentary, Leslie. Excellent work. I mean, I was left with a lot of questions about this. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, and again, everybody who's joining us right now, whether you're listening to us or watching us, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. You can throw them in the chat. Also, now's the time to ask her, to pick her brain about how she got this story, how she got these people to talk. I mean, that's the number one thing, getting these people to talk about something that impacted our country so much. But Leslie, let me look at this real quick here. You have Murkoff, obviously, that he was teaching online. You have the teenager in silhouette. You also have, and I'm sorry if I butcher these names, Triajev, the lawyer. Where are these people now? And are they have they all set up new websites? Do you know?
So what we've learned recently is that there is still a lot of fake news coming out of Macedonia. They have been restricted by Facebook in the ways in which they were gaining access before. So since then, Facebook has put up a lot of restrictions on fake news and flagging them, and hired third-party fact checkers and organizations, including the international fact-checking website, which is a third-party entity. But so they are restricted. But now a lot of people are going to Parler, and Parler is a right-wing sort of free speech uh, comparable to Facebook. It was launched by several Republican operatives, several years ago, I believe, and they have gotten enough funding, and it's gaining a lot of traction. So a lot of people are just putting a lot of fake news there, and so that's what we've learned from the Macedonian side. But I do know that it's coming from. They're going to figure out any ways they can to still infiltrate Facebook. But it's also, probably more of a focus right now on our own country. We've got this whole QAnon issue that's big on 4chan and a lot of these underground sort of sites and social networks that are making a big difference in how we're reading and what we're reading, spreading conspiracy theories that are getting either creating them that are getting picked up by Fox News, and then the president then quotes Fox News, and the whole cycle is this life cycle that continues to keep going every time you feed the beast.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that we have to remind people, even though I see the focus here is Facebook, we also have those other platforms out there that they will figure out a way to get this basic lies, misinformation, disinformation out there, and definitely, I saw that, they were making, you know, I mean, they can make $50,000 in one post. And I was seeing here that it said something, they 50 and $60 million US dollars that they made. Okay, so are we saying all these teenagers suddenly have mansions? And I mean, I found it really surprising that their parents didn't know this was going on. Meantime, they're making 50 grand off one post. How did that work out? How did the parents not know? How did not the neighbors not catch on?
So there were numerous sides to these stories. So some parents actually knew what their kids were doing and they were fine with it. They were like, great, you're making money. It's not going to affect me. It's not our election. So go for it. Other parents didn't know because the kids were scared to tell them. And so they kept their money hidden. And, they sort of probably told them later. But the reality was you'd see kids, driving these fancy cars at the end of these stretches of fake news spreading, and they were starting to see their money rake in. Fancy cars. We tracked some fake news writers who actually made enough money to invest in a bar right in the heart of town, of the town of Velis. And so this little bar, the kind of nightclub, was a hot spot where a lot of people went and shared stories and figured out where to, what to spread and who was doing what. And it was just getting up and running when we were there. So they had made enough money, and so they were, starting a new restaurant and a new bar, a nightclub, and it was fascinating. We kind of went in a bit undercover and trying to see if we could get them to talk. So anyway, it was interesting to see where the money went. I haven't been back, so I don't know if that bar is still operating or not. But I interviewed the mayor of Velis, and he was quite proud of these kids. He says, I have no problem with them making money. Like infused some cash and operating capital into the city, which had been strucken by the economic downturn and sort of an industrial collapse there in the city for the last decade. So it was sort of a new industrial or digital boom.
Yeah. I realized you definitely got the trust. I mean, you got the guy who showed them how to build websites. He was just a teacher, right? And then you have the lawyer who decided, okay, I like that conservative mood. I'm really going to concentrate on Trump. And then you got the kid in silhouette. You gained their trust. What was the most challenging part of producing this documentary? Because you did have major players who played a big part, and I don't know if they continue playing a big part in this whole fake news scheme, but what was the most challenging part as a filmmaker for you?
Well, it was certainly convincing them to speak on camera. A number of them had spoken to other journalists who sort of came in right when this story erupted, and BuzzFeed gets all the credit for sort of finding this story and bringing it out into the public spotlight. It was a newsworthy story. It was catchy and it had an interesting hook. So a lot of journalists around the world came there and tried to interview everybody, and that's clearly how I learned of it. And then I thought, well, do I really want to go there and retread on an old story? But I just felt like there was more to it that wasn't being reported. And so I thought, well, if I go out there, I want to sit with these folks and try to get into their, mindset and understand what made them tick and where was the morality in this, and what were the decision points and turning points for them, because clearly they were they were either completely in or they were partially in,
Yeah.
and they went out. So I got to interview, as you see in the film, a number of people who had completely different stances on it. And the kid in the silhouette, he was very scared of getting bullied by his friends who were still doing the fake news. So he would not go on camera, like we are. He wanted to be in silhouette. So he felt morally challenged by it to the point where he got out of it and he threw his computer away. Trace, on the other hand, was somebody that we had found after we got back from our first trip in Macedonia. And he was written about, again, I think by BuzzFeed and picked up by a number of other news outlets, that he was sort of a kind of a mastermind or a leader in leading entrepreneur in this world. We didn't find his connection to these teenagers who were also doing it. It was like a gold rush. Everybody was sort of doing it. But Trace was hiring these people in the US and felt like that was a smarter way to get business going quicker.
I
So
was wondering about that, Leslie. He said he hired journalists. Did you ever try to find those people? Because in a sense, they're helping, continue the fake information out there. I mean,
yeah,
this guy thought he really had a real news site, right? He said they had their own sources,
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. But then he showed the names of several people like Alexander Warren. I mean, were
yeah.
you able to find any of those people? Because they're making a buck.
Right. A lot of those were fake names. They were going to there were pseudonyms. There was a guy named Paris Wade that we tried to track down who wouldn't return our calls in Nevada, sort of outside of Las Vegas. He ended up running for an office in the state assembly, if you can believe that, and did not win, but he was out there holding babies and petting dogs and talking to people. And yet there were articles about him as one of the leading fake news writers, working for foreign governments and with foreign countries. And so, I found it unbelievable that, and why I should find it unbelievable, I suppose, is the next question, but because it's becoming normal. And I think for me, to answer your question about trust, so we found Trace, we contacted him. It took a while, but it ultimately led to 3-hour Skype calls. And that trust that we did over Skype. And here's how I did it, because normally I would be fuming, whether you're on the left or the right and you're doing this, it's about the act of doing this, right?
Right.
I was just angry about it, but I had to look at Trace as somebody who was an entrepreneur, and I had to pull away all the morality in my own head and look at this extremely objective. And so, having interviewed a lot of leaders in the industry, in different industries, like Steve Jobs and George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Ralph Lauren and Bob Iger, people like that, like I've spoken to them about what it takes to lift things off the ground and build entities and enterprises. And I had to put that same mindset when I interviewed Trace. So I think he was somewhat complimented in a weird way, that I was not just going, this is wrong, and giving my stance and attacking him a little bit. I wasn't praising him. I was just asking a lot of questions about process. And so I think he got to trust me. We had a little banter, and then he says, all right, you can come out, come on out. I'll go on camera. I haven't gone on camera yet. And so at that point, I teamed with Revelations Entertainment, which is Morgan Freeman's company, who brought in some finishing funds. And we went out and filmed Trace. And that was, I wasn't sure if he was going to flake on me after traveling across the world, the last minute, but he kept his promise and we did it. And
But
here it is.
I think what you did is, yeah, you built that trust, showing him that you were not on attack mode. You wanted to hear his side, what many journalists, that we have to do. No matter what we feel inside about a certain issue or a certain person, we still have to get the story, be fair. And again, this is a perfect example. What you just showed us is gaining that trust, showing him, hey, I don't come with an agenda. I just want to hear what you have to say. So,
Yeah.
a learning lesson for all us journalists listening to this right now. I'm going to go to a question real quick here from Keith Goodrich. Do you agree that this is exponentially occurring worldwide, and how to control and stop this issue? And how to control and stop this issue?
Well, it's a big question that would probably take another hour panel and with lots of leading experts on this issue. But I think it's going to be the responsibility of the social media networks to put in place, restrictions and what Facebook is calling circuit breakers that will literally flag and stop through their algorithms fake news that are coming through. But it's still regarded in many ways as not enough. What they're doing, Twitter is finally taking some steps to patrol fake news and not push it out there and hold it before they push it out. Just like the Hunter Biden a laptop story that just broke this last week, they put a stop to that until they could actually fact check it. And I think that's what these social networks really need to do. And I also think there's rules and regulations that could be put in place by governments that will penalize, you know, disinformation in a stronger way. I mean, but that's also a very fine line. It's very tricky. You see third world countries who are jailing people for posting truth about corrupt governments and trying to spread the word about corrupt politicians, and they are jailed for posting this stuff on Facebook. So it's tricky. We don't want to go down that road either. So
Have you been contacted by any lawmakers or any, big social media companies? I mean, I noticed that you did have Zuckerberg in the piece. Were you going to have a sit down with him? I just kind of added a loaded question. So first, have you been contacted by any lawmakers because, maybe they had an aha moment looking at this film?
I don't know, not yet. I mean, we're getting it out to various folks to see it, but honestly, I don't feel like it. I feel like it tells an encapsulating story of what happened and what is happening, and is a hint to what's going on. But I feel like the energy right now is so much about going forward and about what's happening. How do we stop the election and QAnon and all these things, that there's a whole news story that is being told right now. But I would love to see or be a part of any sort of activity or legislation that could be discussed and put on the table if there's ways that I could help. But as a filmmaker, my job is to really take the story, coalesce it and put it out to the viewers who can, hopefully change the way they spread their own news. And we have to be very, I think, responsible to our own social circles, even on social media, what we share and what we spread, because it's a ripple effect.
Yeah. Well, you shared it out there. You never know. They may invite you to some congressional committee. They're always looking for people to tell them what's going on, because sometimes our own lawmakers out there don't explore further than what's put in front of their face.
Right.
We only have a few minutes, but I wanted to tell our audience out there, because I did see your TED Talk. By the way, everybody, look up her TED Talk. It's very inspirational. I'm just going to shift gears a little bit here. Tell us about the two people in your life who inspired you to become the great filmmaker you are today, because I think it's important people know.
Well, that's a compliment. I appreciate that. But I would say that growing up, I learned a lot about my grandfather, who was of Iwerks, who was the, co-creator and designer and animator of Mickey Mouse and Oswald the Lucky Rabbit and Minnie Mouse and a host of other characters, and Oscar-winning visual effects pioneer. He worked with Hitchcock and did the effects in The Birds, and could develop the technology for Mary Poppins, the live action and animation combination work, and the 360 degree camera that you see at Disneyland. So he invented that, and just a whole host of things. And I never knew him. I was one when he passed away, but I learned about him through my first documentary called The Hand Behind the Mouse, the Iwerks story. And that was my way to get to know him and become inspired by his drive and ambition and talent. And then I would say my father, who, really gave me the rope to sort of say, do what you want, do what you love, and the money will come. And also to be there when, you know, I had a crazy creative idea, or, you know, I think I grew up watching him at the Disney studios and sort of seeing this solid creative and drive and work ethic. But you know, it's hard to limit that because my mom is equally as inspirational to me in her own ways too. And as I've said in other interviews, you know, I grew up with a mother who was always asking my dad questions, and she was very inquisitive. And so I think just by osmosis, I learned to ask questions and learned to be inquisitive. And we had a world book set in our house, and I just loved reading and learning and traveling in my head. And so I kind of made that my career. And anyway, so I've been very fortunate, and it hasn't always been an easy career to go down, but it's been definitely fun.
Well, I wanted to make sure everybody knew because I mean, your father and your grandfather both, I think they won Academy Awards too, right?
Yeah, they both are Oscar winners. My dad
Oscar
lifetime
winner.
achievement. Yeah, and my
Wow.
dad wrote a book on my grandfather, which for anybody that's interested, is called Walt Disney's Ultimate Inventor: The Genius
All
of
right.
Iwerks. So check that out if
I
you
mean,
have interest.
I think that's very inspirational. So we're going to have a quick question here from Laura Peralta Jones. Has any mainstream media outlets like MSNBC or the likes of Rachel Maddow reached out to you for interviews? And how can this be brought into more mainstream news avenues? That's
Well, hey, Laura. um, I would love that. We have submitted the film to various networks. I think we're up against a pretty intense news cycle right now. So we haven't gotten the bite yet, but we are trying sort of this grassroots campaign to share the film as far and wide as we can. And I think, you know, a lot of screenings and Q&As like this and sharing it and hoping that, you know, people will pick it up and share it. You can buy it now on iTunes. You can buy it on Vimeo on demand. We're waiting for it to launch on Amazon and Google Play. And then, you know, we've got a distributor, Shorts TV, is putting it on their network around the world. So, you know, we're hoping that we'll slowly gain traction. And again, it's recently released. So it's, you know, had we sort of done this about a year ago, maybe it would have gotten traction. But I just think right now the timing is sort of perfect for what it is. So,
it is. It
yeah.
is. It definitely is. And everybody out there who's watching this or listening, please put it out there on SPJ Truth, SPJ hashtag SPJ Truth. Let's get it out there. Make sure everybody sees it because, you know, what's important as journalists is we also have to educate the public. And this is a perfect film where they can open their eyes and go, okay, the next time I share something on Facebook, you know, I have to double and triple check who's sharing this with me because I see this all the time on social media, all the time. All right, I don't want you to give away your secrets. I know you're working on 5 projects right now. What are we going to be looking at? Because I know that you do things on heroes and you do things on visionaries and you know the environment. Can you give us a little nibble on what you're working on without giving away your secrets?
Yeah, so well, I've been fortunate during the pandemic to be in development on a number of projects with numerous studios, and it's been a lot of fun. I've got my team working, you know, on a variety of different projects, but I am always looking to go into areas and subjects I don't know much about. So that's kind of my focus, or things that really, you know, inspire me or create a strong emotion from me. I can say that I'm doing some great historical entertainment projects, and, you know, perhaps series. And then what else? I'm really interested in the world of space. And so there's a project that hopefully you'll be hearing about in the world of space exploration. So that'll be
Excellent,
fun.
excellent. We
Yeah.
only have a few minutes left. I just want for the people just a quick, you know, piece of inspiration. There's always a journalist or somebody out there who wants to be a documentarian. What do you say to that person to go do it?
Go do it.
Okay, that's easy. That's
No, I
easy.
mean, seriously, you know, I say pick up a camera, research a subject. You know, I admire journalists so much because they get down and drill down really quick and get it done. I would love to team with journalists. If there are journalists out there that would want to team with me as a filmmaker journalist duo, that to me is a great partnership because I can make the film and then the journalist can go, you know, really dig. But honestly, if you want to make your own film, pick up a camera, go with a light, go shoot it yourself, learn how to shoot, learn how to edit. I edit my own projects as much as I can. Some of them are, just too much, but this one I edited myself in like 30 days. So, I mean, my friend Doug actually from USC, my buddy, he helped too. And I would say between 30 to 45 days, we cut it together using Premiere Pro. You know, that was cloud-based and you could share stuff. So I think there's just lots of ways to tell your stories. If you already have a good story sense, it's just a matter of doing it.
Yeah. And so don't overthink it. I mean, as I'm watching the documentary, I'm thinking, man, did she have a big crew? And I know that in the beginning you said you just went over there with your camera. It doesn't need, you don't need an army of people to get the job done. And you're a perfect example of the perfect proof.
Well, it's Suki Medencevic is my longtime DP, and he did the camera work on this one, and just a great partner. But like, when I found this film called Recycled Life, that back in 2005, I guess it was, or four, and people living in a garbage dump. I mean, that was a passion project that was like, I have to tell the story. It's got too much humanity in it and too much inspiration. And I shot it and did all the, came back and edited it, and I did the sound on the set. And so I think you can do all this stuff. It's not that hard, especially in today's world. It's just really having the commitment to take it from ideation to completion.
Right. So like you said, let's just do it. So if you're a journalist with an idea, just do it, because there are so many stories to tell. And, Leslie Iwerks, like I said, she's a born storyteller. Thank you so much, Leslie, for joining us today. And again, we're going to spread the word about this wonderful documentary. Thank you for digging into this issue, because it is an issue that's affecting our business every day. And, I mean, what you're doing is you're educating the public, and you're also educating the lawmakers out there that, sometimes they tend to attack us and tell us that we're not, well, we're fake news, and it's not. It's not. So Leslie, continue doing great work. Continue inspiring. Again, I recommend to everybody to watch her TED Talk. All right, you guys, thank you for joining us today on SPJ Truth Day. Leslie, have a great day. Everyone, thank you for joining us. And don't forget to join SPJ if you haven't yet. Until next time, have a great day. Leslie, goodbye.
Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
All right.